And welcome back to the Most Accurate Podcast. My name is Anthony Stalter, joined as always by my partner in crime, for a long time now, John Paulsen. John, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Anthony. Very happy with my decision not to watch last night's game. Second straight week I've done that. It just opens up my Thursday night, and I can watch the field goals, happen online, and not have to worry too much about watching the game.
Yeah, Amazon Prime has got to be ecstatic that they bought this Thursday night football package because seemingly every game has not been good. I mean, even you had a good matchup, Bills and Rams in week one, and that game wasn't good. Buffalo handled the Rams. So yeah, not great for Thursday night. But we do have some Thursday night takeaways. There were a couple of things that John wanted to hit on. We'll of course get into this week's biggest fantasy storylines, Jonathan Taylor news, James Conner news, and of course our sleeper sneaky start of the week, where John highlights one player that he thinks could be a sneaky start, and we'll get into some of the other sneaky starts for John, and of course kind of wrap things all up with the breakout receiver model that has fared very well here in the last 2 weeks. We had to wait until the data was collected in the first 4 weeks or so, but the last 2 weeks we've used that breakout receiver model. All this content can be found, of course, at 4for4.com. You can give us a follow on Twitter at 4for4_John and at Anthony Stalter, but you want to make sure that if you don't have a subscription, you're missing out on a lot of key content, including John's rankings every single week. So, John, I know you didn't watch the Thursday night game, but when it comes to Brian Robinson, this is 2 weeks now where he came back after getting shot, multiple gunshot wounds in the offseason. So he missed several weeks. He came back last week. I think he had like 22 yards. And last night he wound up finding the end zone. He appears to be the RB1 in Washington now.
Yeah, it came out yesterday that they were expecting him to start last night's game, and he handled 17 of the team's 27 backfield touches, so a pretty healthy portion. And he led the backfield in snaps with 47%. The one knock on his game at this point is that he only ran 6 routes, which is the third most amongst him, McKissick and Antonio Gibson. And I think we knew that McKissick was going to run more routes than him. I think the question is if he can get the 3 catches for 18 yards that Antonio Gibson had, that would really add a floor to his game, and that's 4.8 PPR fantasy points right there. That would help him a lot. Right now, it looks like he is a touchdown dependent, RB2, RB3. You might get, if he doesn't score that touchdown, you're going to be pretty disappointed in that just 60 yards. But he's sort of an Ezekiel Elliott right now. Not going to catch a lot of passes. Needs to get in the end zone to really pay off for your fantasy squad.
Yeah, it's a tough spot because they got McKissick to kind of handle some of the passing game stuff. Antonio Gibson is still involved to some degree. And of course, the Commanders aren't going to be in a spot where they're facing one of the worst run defenses in the league like they did last night in Chicago. So kind of a perfect storm to start Brian Robinson last night, but good advice there moving forward on him. The other guy that I know you wanted to touch on was Darnell Mooney. Is he a wide receiver one? Even with the Bears passing game being as inefficient as it is Mooney kind of a must start moving forward?
I wouldn't say must start. He's certainly the wide receiver one for the Bears, but sometimes the real world status doesn't translate to fantasy. The reason I did want to mention him is that we try to look for signs of life. He had a really tough start to the year. The Bears have been really run heavy, but they're starting to trust Justin Fields a little bit more. I think Justin ended up with 18.8 fantasy points or something around 18, given the 88 yards rushing and then the 27 pass attempts for 190 and a touchdown. He also had a pick. But regarding Mooney, he's got last 3 weeks, he doesn't have a touchdown, but he's got 94 yards, 52 yards, and 68 yards receiving. So if you just look at that 3-game span, he's playing at a 1,200-yard pace, which is sort of what we were expecting from him heading into this season as the number one guy. And you just weren't expecting the Bears to be so run heavy early on. But 12 targets yesterday, 7 catches, 68 yards. That's the type of usage that he's going to need. I mean, he had 140 plus targets last year, and um, that's sort of why we liked him as a middle round pick heading into the season. So starting to happen, and if he hit your waiver wire, which he might have after those first 2 games, it'd be a good idea to pick him up.
All right, John, let's get into this week's biggest fantasy storylines. And after he missed last week, I know Jonathan Taylor owners a little bit worried that, concerned, of course, with whether or not he's going to play this week. But it appears that Jonathan Taylor is trending up. What can you tell us?
Yeah, they seem to be heading towards a start this week, but we're not. I don't think we're out of the woods yet when it comes to Taylor. He's got like some kind of high ankle sprain, but they were talking about him possibly playing last week. He wasn't able to get healthy enough to play, and then I think that was the Thursday night game, and then had 10 days off here, not 10 days off, but 10-day break between week 5 and week 6. And it looks like he was limited in practice yesterday, and is on track to play. I think the question probably is who's going to be the RB2 there. Nyheim Hines coming off that concussion. I mentioned this, I think, in my AMA yesterday for our Discord 444 subscribers, that I'm wondering if these players that have a concussion in week X are going to be able to get back for week X plus 1, given that the nature of the NFL right now, what happened with Tua, and our team's going to be cautious so they aren't looking like the next Miami Dolphins, mishandling a player that has a concussion. And we saw it with Isaiah McKenzie, wasn't able to get cleared through the concussion protocol for week 5. He's back week 6, so he had to take a week off in terms of gameplay, but back this week. And I wonder if we see the same thing with Nyheim Hines. Is that something we should just sort of expect moving forward with these concussion players? But Taylor probably the RB1, and then Hines, if he can make it back, the RB2. And they've got that as a Deion Jackson, who played pretty well in last week against the Broncos. Kind of surprisingly got thrust into a bigger role. He's actually a pretty good size speed guy. So yeah, Deion Jackson as the RB3 there.
All right, so James Conner likely to miss week 6, John, perhaps some additional time. When it comes to James Conner managers, what's your best advice here? Because certainly frustrated. Do you hold on to him? The game scripts haven't been good for Arizona. They're having to put the ball in the air a lot. He's a good football player, and probably a better real-time football player than he is maybe for fantasy managers. But what's your advice when it comes to James Conner beyond this week?
Yeah, and this is unfortunate. This is a great matchup that he's going to miss against Seattle. They're a very green matchup in our hotspots report. So that's why Benjamin is ranked fairly high as an RB2. Probably Keontae Ingram is going to be the second back in that offense this week. He was not active last week, but since the Cardinals lost both Connor and Darrell Williams, they've also added a couple players. But I think Ingram probably gets that crack at the second number 2 job. I wouldn't expect Benjamin to see like 20 plus touches, because it just doesn't seem to be in the nature right now of the Cardinals to give one player that many touches. So I think they probably will work in a second guy. But he's probably good for 15 to 17 and a really nice matchup against the Seahawks. So as far as Connor managers, I'm one of them. You just hold. I mean, he's been getting good touches when he's been out there, and you just hope that he can get over this rib injury pretty quickly. I thought it was interesting that the report said perhaps additional time with the rib injury, because it did sound like they were holding out hope that he might be able to play this week. And usually when that sort of language is used, they're back the following week. And rib injury tends to be a 1 to 2 week injury. So we'll see if Connor's able to make it back next week.
So Damian Harris looks like he is going to miss multiple weeks with an injury. Is it time to fire up Ramondre Stevenson as an RB1?
Yeah, if you have him, you need to start him. I have him ranked 5th overall running back this week, half PPR. And I would be a little bit cautious in that last week there was only 2 running backs active. So once Damian Harris went out, that's number 1 reason why that Ramondre Stevenson played all those snaps and got all those touches. They're going to likely have Pierre Strong active this week, so that there'll be some sort of rotation. It's the Patriots. We've seen that before. But I would expect Ramondre to be the lead back, perhaps the bell cow. He might end up with 20 touches, and Strong working in for 5 to 7 or something like that. And there might be another player in play as well. They might have 3 guys active this week, but really talented player, can catch the ball as well. So that's great. You get that dual threat ability. Got to be feeling pretty good about the matchup against Cleveland there. Giving up 29.0 adjusted fantasy points allowed to running backs this year.
Yeah, and you got to think that Bill Belichick knows what he has to do. It's kind of like Brian Dable in New York. He knows that he's limited at quarterback. He's got to win games on the strength of his defense and Saquon Barkley and shorten up things and making sure that you're limiting possessions for the opponent, making sure that you get to the fourth quarter either down a possession or up a possession. And Belichick is probably going to think the same way. So you have to imagine that Stevenson's going to see a lot of work. But good point on the rotation, because you're right, they tend to lean that way. All right, John, Raheem Mostert, the reports are he says he's fine. What do you like him this week? I mean, Miami's kind of an interesting spot here offensively. You expect them to be down, but Minnesota defensively isn't great, and Miami is at home. What do you think about Raheem Mostert in Week 6?
Yeah, has a knee injury, but looks like he's going to be able to play. Has been seeing lead back touches the last couple of weeks, and has a pretty good matchup against Minnesota. They're sort of a neutral matchup against running backs. He's worked his way into the low end RB2 rankings because of his number of carries he's seeing for Miami. They're down 2 quarterbacks as well, so I'm interested to see what Mike McDaniel dials up in terms of a run pass rate with that Skylar Thompson in at quarterback, and then Tyreek Hill's banged up, and Waddle a little bit banged up as well. So pretty much everybody's banged up for the Dolphins right now. But it looks like he'll play. I think he's a sneaky start in terms of where he's typically ranked has been in the mid 20s to the 30s, and now I think he's moving up those rankings a little bit, and is a pretty solid start given the number of touches he's been seeing.
All right, I'll throw a bunch of players at you in our roundup here. Michael Thomas did not practice Wednesday or Thursday. Just a reminder, we record this podcast on Friday. Sometimes we're given injury information right before the podcast, sometimes during. But just keep that in mind that John's working primarily off of Wednesday and Thursday practice reports. So Michael Thomas did not practice. Rashad Bateman did not practice Wednesday or Thursday. T. Higgins, DNP on Wednesday and Thursday. Kyle Pitts, who did not play last week, limited. He is expected to play, though. I think that's a 2-week absence now for Kyle Pitts. Keenan Allen upgraded to limited on Thursday. Tyler Lockett limited on Thursday, but he was a midweek downgrade. John, don't like to see that. And Melvin Gordon limited on Thursday. He's got apparently a new rib injury, and Denver doesn't play until Monday night. So just your overall thoughts on this roundup.
Yeah, typically, if a player is limited on Thursday, they are able to suit up. So a lot of these guys should be able to play. I'm really watching Lockett and to see if this was just a little tweak, and they're going to put him on the injury report, and he's fine to practice today. If he doesn't practice today, then you know that the injury is more significant, and you need to make other plans because it's unlikely to a 50-50 proposition that he's able to play. And the one guy, well, there's a couple guys I wanted to mention. Michael Thomas, him being out. Chris Olave's coming back from a concussion. Another question mark in terms of, is he going to be able to get cleared for this week? We'll see. But if he's able to play, he's a nice start. Olave with Thomas out continues to produce when he's active. Chris Olave, I think he's still leading the league in air yards. Bateman, I'm not expecting to play, but we'll see if he's able to do anything today. Devin Duvernay's a pretty solid start with Bateman out. T. Higgins, if he was active last week but didn't play hardly at all. If he's out, then you're looking at Hayden Hurst, you're looking at Tyler Boyd as good starts, and you're hoping that Pitts gets going, and then we'll see what Keenan Allen's able to do this week or today on Friday, and if he's able to get back. I mean, it's obviously good to see him at least out on the field, working on the side, being limited at least. But he's a player that you can typically plug in when he comes back, but it's he's getting up there a little bit in years, and you kind of want to see him perform before you plug him in. If he gets a full practice in today, then I would, have confidence starting Keenan. If he's limited and questionable, then you're just kind of looking at him as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type.
Regular listeners now to the podcast know that John and I, in our league that we're in together and have been for the last couple of years, we use Sleeper, and Sleeper is one of the fastest growing customizable fantasy football platforms in the industry. If you want to use it, great. Head to sleeper.com. You can download the app, which John and I both have. We really enjoy Sleeper. It's sleek. It's really user friendly for somebody like me. John is proficient when it comes to all things computers. I am not. So, to say that John uses it with ease doesn't say as much. Me saying that I use it with ease, that really goes.
That is saying something.
That says something, exactly. So make sure you go to sleeper.com or download the latest app today. Sleeper, sneaky start of the week, John, and you're highlighting a Bills wide receiver who's got deep threat ability.
Yeah, and I'd like to come back to these players that I touted in the preseason as really good picks, and we've had a few of them. Like my mid to late round receivers are doing well. Tyler Lockett was one of the guys I listed in caps in my strategery article. Isaiah McKenzie is another, and things are really looking up for McKenzie with Jamison Crowder out. He's already had a few good games for the Bills, and he had to miss last week, so Khalil Shakir stepped in and had a good game. So my only concern here is that they split the time in the slot between McKenzie and Shakir like they did with McKenzie and Crowder. So that's my only concern, is that McKenzie's snap rate doesn't get up to 70-80%. So where he could really put up Cole Beasley type catch numbers. So Beasley had 82 catches back-to-back seasons out of the slot. And I think McKenzie has that sort of upside, but he can't get there if he's not playing 75-80% of the snaps. So we'll see how this thing shakes out moving forward. The Crowder injury really boosts his outlook, because it looks like he should be a full-time player. But if they do want to get Shakir in and get him rolling, then we might see a time split here. But this is a great matchup in terms of the high-scoring nature of this game. The Chiefs should be able to keep up with the Bills. Even if they can't, I think the Bills keep their foot on the gas, because they know that Patrick Mahomes can, come back at any moment. So they're not going to be taking it easy, in the middle of the third quarter if they're up 21 points. So I'm looking, this is going to be a fun one. And I think McKenzie should get in. He's got 3 touchdowns already on the year. And he should definitely get in the action. I like him a lot this week.
Yeah. What evidence do you have that the Chiefs can come back on, the Bills at any second or any 13 seconds?
Seems like there was a game that happened in at least one.
All right, let's get into the other sneaky starts. This is just a tease. When you go to 4for4.com, you'll get John's entire article, his entire sleepy. It was almost 2 episodes in a row I didn't do that. You'll get John's entire sneaky starts article. Multiple quarterbacks, multiple running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Again, this is just a couple that we wanted to highlight on the podcast. We'll start off with quarterback, and we'll start off with a guy that, John, I know that this hurts you, but he did pull off a pretty significant upset last week in London. It's Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons I decided to, rank him a little bit higher. It was my first extended look at him in a while, and he looked really competent. Like given his receiving core issues, he played really well. He's moving fine on the ankle, so his rushing yards is a big deal for him fantasy wise. And the Ravens are 27th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. The Ravens should be able to put up some points on the Giants, forcing the Giants to pass the ball a little bit more. It looks like maybe the Giants receiving core might be getting a little bit healthier as well. But he's quietly the QB 14 on the year, and I think that's worth a look. He's averaged 46 yards rushing, 0.4 touchdowns as a runner, and he started to jibe with Darius Slayton on that trip to London. So looking at the Ravens, they've given up an average of 305 yards and 1.8 touchdowns to quarterbacks this year. So good matchup.
Let's hand out one running back. It's Kenneth Walker versus the Cardinals. And with the injury situation going on with Seattle, Walker's going to be, I think, and he probably has been, one of the biggest waiver wire pickups in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and he's probably on, in sharper leagues, he was already on rosters, but maybe in shallow leagues, he was out there the waiver wire, and people should, if they still have him available on the waiver wire, they should go out and pick him up because he's, likely to see 15 plus touches per week in a very surprisingly good offense. And he rushed for 88 yards last week, I think on 8 carries, had a touchdown. He's averaging 6.35 yards per carry. I think the one concern with him is that he's probably not going to have a huge role in the passing game. DJ Dallas will be involved this week, and perhaps Travis Homer, who was the starting passing down back earlier in the year, if he gets back from injury, he may fill in. But you're looking at him as a 2-down back, likely to score their touchdowns, and show that he's a pretty effective runner. And this has been a pretty good offense. So I think he's a solid start this week.
All right, Taysom Hill went off last week. The Saints are going to keep him involved. It doesn't really matter what position he plays. He's going to be involved. He's going to be involved a lot, especially around the goal line. When it comes to this matchup against the Bengals, you also like him because obviously he qualifies to be a tight end, and the Bengals have struggled a bit against tight ends.
Yeah, we're looking at a huge game. Obviously, it's a little bit point chasey. We don't know if he's going to have that sort of role moving forward, but it seems like the Saints have found something, and they do want to use him around the goal line. That's not hugely surprising at all. It was one of the concerns with Alvin Kamara coming in. Not only him, but also Mark Ingram kind of eating into his touches. But now it just seems like they're going to use Hill as the RB2. They're barely going to use Ingram at all, and they're going to lean on Alvin Kamara most of the game in most other areas of the field. But they're going to bring in Taysom Hill, and he's not a tight end. I tweeted earlier this week. I don't know what he is, but he's not a tight end. I think he's a running. I think he's basically a wildcat running back. I think it would be best if he were listed as a running back because he has 21 rushes, 1 pass attempt, and 1 reception. So that to me is a running back. But regardless, he's going to have a low floor on a weekly. You might get some clunkers. You might get a 3-carry, 20-yard game, or a 3-carry, 15-yard game, and that's all he gets. But he seems, better than 50-50 to score a touchdown. And you can't say that about a whole lot of tight ends. And obviously he has 40-point upside. And I was wondering if they were going to start, after they run him, all of a sudden they hit him with a pass because he can throw the ball.
Yeah.
And they did this last week. So, with Winston out, their quarterback situation, Andy Dalton, they're just trying to find ways to move the ball. And I think they found that Taysom Hill is one of the ways they could do it, along with Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave right now with that receiving quarterback banged up. So I think at the tight end position, which is basically a wasteland after a few guys, he's getting into tight end 1 territory, and that's where I have him, low end tight end 1 territory in terms of, where you could rank him. And if you start to see him get 5, 6, 7 carries, high value carries in near the goal line per game, then he's going to be an every week start at the tight end position because he's likely to score a touchdown.
All right, John, we'll wrap up the podcast today with a look at the breakout receiver model over the last couple of weeks. Not only has the data been collected, but I know that at least last week they started to kind of put things into context for subscribers at 4for4.com. Here's what the numbers mean. And it is a very helpful model. Although, as you pointed out last week, and I thought it was a great point, the model doesn't know about injuries. The model doesn't factor in certain things, that not only an injury to the player, but also an injury to maybe a quarterback or a position that could impact the numbers. But nonetheless, it's a very useful tool. So what's the breakout receiver model showing for this week? Who's popping?
Yeah, there's a couple of Steeler receivers up top. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens are number 2 and number 4 in the model. And Jeff Hicks is writing the article now for us, giving us some fantasy context. But the way I use it is I look at it and I basically, it's an underachievement model right now. These players are getting usage, especially the ones listed at the top, and they're just not living up to it. And if you look for players with a high difference, that's the difference between their expected and their actual fantasy points. These are the players that are most underperforming. We have it sorted by expected points so that, the big names are up top so you can kind of see. But for example, Cortland Sutton, expected 12.8. His scoring over the last 3 weeks is 12.4. So he's not underperforming by much. But when we tested this, we really didn't see a difference in the hit rate between somebody with a difference of between 0 and -1 versus somebody with a difference of -5 or less or more, I guess, but like -5 to -8. It doesn't make them any more likely to hit. It's just these players that are underperforming are likely to hit, getting likely to hit the end zone, have a pop game, maybe hit the end zone twice. So, Kenny Pickett's hard to trust, but these Steeler receivers are both expected to, over the last 3 weeks, to score over 13 points, a half PPR, and Deontay's at 7.7, Pickens is at 10. Jamar Chase continues to appear, and I'm just going to keep speaking this into existence because I've got him in our fantasy or FFPC league, and we really need a big game out of him after starting Curtis Samuel last night. A double kick in the nuts when you see Curtis Samuel's stat line, and then you find out that he dropped a 40-yard touchdown. That's tough. Anyway, Jamar Chase, I think we'll get it going, especially if you have T. Higgins, hobbled, not 100%. You just have to think that he's going to get one of these 14, 15 target games and really bust out. He's a really good player. DJ Moore is kind of interesting this week too. I know there's a lot of fantasy managers who have him and don't know what to do with him. If you're desperate and you're sick of starting him, but you just don't have another good option on the waiver wire, it might be worth a start this week. He's, actually shown a pretty nice rapport with PJ Walker. In 128 career pass attempts with Walker, Walker has targeted Moore 31 times, which is a pretty healthy 24% target share. That's basically what he's seen so far this year. And then has an impressive 8.74 yards per attempt when targeting Moore, which is a lot better than what Mayfield has delivered thus far this season. So if Walker is under center, which we're expecting, it might be a boost for Moore, even though we know that PJ Walker is not a terribly good quarterback thus far in his career, but at least can target Moore fairly well. And Evan Ingram's kind of popping up here in the model. He's the number 4 tight end after Kyle Pitts, number 1. Didn't want to mention him, but I guess we need to. Zach Ertz, number 2 in the model. Gerald Everett, number 3, and then Evan Ingram, number 4. He's scoring 4.5 fantasy points on 9 expected, which is pretty healthy expected fantasy points for a tight end. So he's the other guy I wanted to mention.
All right, there you go. That's the Breakout Receiver Model, which, again, you can find at 4for4.com, along with all of John's rankings. We have betting content, DFS content, season-long content, guys that you might be wanting to target in trades. I mean, everything is available at 4for4.com for subscribers. So hopefully, if you haven't yet, hopefully you have an opportunity to subscribe at 4for4.com. Again, John can be followed right there, right at his Twitter page at 4for4_John. I'm at Anthony Stalter. We do appreciate everybody tuned in to the Most Accurate Podcast. We record on Friday, so we'll be back on Friday. Everybody, good luck this weekend, and we'll see you next week.